All right, here's one that is more of evidence to what I've been saying about the gender war, especially the black gender war. A lot of stuff I say about it, especially about women, kind of doesn't go over guys' head. It's like they disagree with it. And a lot of times they disagree with it is not because of fact. They disagree with it because of feeling, emotion. A lot of guys, because they've been taught to kind of suppress their emotions, don't believe that they have them. And when they show up, they don't recognize them. So when they tell me about why certain things won't happen because of what they believe, and what they believe is not what they think. What they believe is what they feel. And feeling not need evidence. So this is something I'm actually going to read. It actually popped up in my feed, and I'm going to read it and put it in as far as evidence toward the end of the gender war. When times are good, the gender gap grows. A study shows growing national wealth and gender equality accentuates differences in the types of choices men and women make. In an idealized version of human existence, wealth lifts all boats. Gender equality prevails and everyone behaves freely as the individuals they are. Such a gender-equal fictional utopia starts from a premise that equal access to wealth and opportunity will erase the divide between men and women. But what if the utopian predictions are wrong? What if women and men, when all other things are largely equal, express more, not less, of a gender-based perspective? Armin Falk, an economics professor at the University of Bonn, and Johannes Ermel, a doctoral student in economics at the University of California, Berkeley, have undertaken a massive study that looks worldwide at how national wealth and gender equality affect the choices men and women make when they think about risk-taking, altruism, and other social factors. In their study, involving 76 countries and 80,000 people, they found greater national wealth and gender equality are tied to bigger differences in preferences between men and women rather than to stronger similarities. See, rich and equal mean men and women make different career choices. They reported their findings, which they say favor one of two competing hypotheses on gender choices. October 18th in Science. This impact, says Matthias Dope, an economics professor at Northwestern University who was not involved in the study, but he says the world is complicated, and I think we will find that neither hypothesis alone is a good summary of data. Those hypotheses address how national wealth and equality affect the choices men and women make. One of them, which the authors dubbed the social role hypothesis, predict wealth and gender equality will lead to more similarities in preferences between genders. With equality in readily available resources, the idea goes women and men will become more alike in their ways. The resource hypothesis, in contrast, holds that abundance and equality will give men and women more freedom to express gender-related preferences, unconstrained by hardships that might force them to do otherwise. In this scenario, a woman who worked in a male-dominated field 50 years ago might have felt pressured to behave as one of the boys. But with more equal gender representation in the workplace, perhaps such constraints would fade, leaving her freer to express more gendered preferences if she wishes. To test these two hypotheses, Falk and Hermel used responses to a survey from people representing every continent and countries at every level of economic development. The Global Preferences Study survey asked participants about how they would respond in different scenarios, involving 6 social factors: risk-taking, patience, altruism, trust, and positive and negative reciprocation, responding in kind to positive and negative interactions. For example, for positive reciprocity, respondents had to settle on how much they would pay for a thank you gift to a total stranger in return for a kind deed. They also rated their responses to the statement, "When someone does me a favor, I am willing to return it." They were asked to rate their responses on a 0 to 10 scale. with 0 being not willing at all. When the two researchers aligned these responses with gross domestic product, GDP, for each country, they found higher GDP tracked with increasing differences in men and women's preferences. When they mapped the survey responses against the index of gender equality in each country, based on factors such as when women gained the right to vote, they found again greater equality tracked with an increasing gender gap and preferences around trust, altruism, and other variables. Falk and Hermel also batched GDP values into 4 groups to assess each of the 6 social factors separately. For all 6, the 2 genders were much more similar in their preferences and the lowest compared with the highest GDP groups. The same pattern applied for gender equality. Across 4 bins of gender equality index values, the lowest values were associated with the smallest gender differences, the highest with the greatest gender differences and preferences. Our study confirms the resource hypothesis. Hermel says the main takeaway is that gender differences and preferences are increasing with country level of economic development as well as gender equality. Alessandra Fogli, monetary advisor in the research department at the Federal Reserve Bank of Minneapolis, who was not part of the study, sees a missed opportunity in the analysis. I wish they had first discussed the variation of overall preferences across countries, such as how trust or risk aversion vary across income groups and not just the differences across genders. The paper offers a suggestive, interesting finding to motivate a deeper, more systematic analysis, but I do not find it conclusive. Debke also expressed some uncertainty. I think the contrast and evaluation of social role and resource hypothesis is a bit too simplified, he says. What should matter is conditions when the respondents of the study were socialized. Very true. He points out that with the survey participants ranging in age from adolescence to the 90s, socialization could have occurred decades ago for some, when gender divisions even in the richest economies were very sharp. He adds gender preference gaps among millennials would tell us something about how boys and girls were socialized in the last 25 years or so, whereas preference gaps for older cohorts will be informative on conditions in earlier times. Having more resources, he notes, might simply mean parents have more time to socialize their children in gender-specific ways. According to Hermel, various explanations for findings are plausible. These social roles are very powerful in explaining gender differences and preferences, he says, but the current study did not measure such factors. Their studies establish a pattern that needs to be further examined to confirm or reject underlying causes, he notes. Hermel also wants to ensure their findings are not misinterpreted as favoring evolutionary or biological explanations over social factors. The biggest misinterpretation could be that our results indicate that social or gender-specific roles do not matter in the formation of gender differences and preferences. I do think that they matter a lot. Like they say, I don't think it's one thing over the other, but it does show a pattern. And it does show a pattern that I've seen as far as when a country gets wealthy, and definitely how people are socialized when there's abundance. And I think that culture, well, we all know culture is based on need for survival. And as the pressure for survival lessens, then the biological urges inside will take more of a dominance, because your biological urges have to be suppressed in times of stress, in times of pressure. You need to do what you need to do to survive. So if you have to act more like a man than a woman because you need to fight, or you need to oppose a harsh environment, then that's going to dictate your culture and dictate the roles of the men and the woman. If you don't have any predators, you don't have any harsh social pressures, then the biology of the women will actually start to take over, and the biology of the man will start to take over, because it can be expressed without restraint, in my opinion. And I've seen a lot of studies that without restraint or without any kind of pressure, men and women will choose different paths. They just will. And with more wealth and more comfort, women will choose different kinds of men, and they will choose um, sometimes not to be with men, because as the countries get richer, marriage goes down. You look at marriage in family over the last, I would say, 70 years in the West, you can see a steady decline, a steady uptick of divorce and a steady downtick of marriages as the socialization of the cultural training to be married, to be paired up in a pair bond lesson. You see more promiscuity. You see less pair bonding. Of course, you're going to see more selfishness because you don't have to depend on the group. And you see even Asian, whites, and other kinds of folks talk about, I don't need a man. And because they don't, they talk about a reality. So black women have been saying it for a long time because that was their reality. Because to put up with a pair bond, to put up with a man or a woman, takes a certain amount of work and takes a certain amount of stress. Now, under extreme circumstances, people just accept their roles. They might not like them, but compared to the alternative, they're a hell of a lot better. When better is, the alternative is actually better on the outside, where you don't have to have a husband or not necessarily have to have a father in the household because money and resources are there, then you're going to see a lot more single mothers. Like I would say, the system causes single mothers. The environment causes single mothers, not men. The social and the resource environment causes single mothers, because a lot of times, even with white women, if the child can get what it needs without being married or them putting up with a man or being under the aegis of a man, women will do that. All women, not just black women. If times get rougher, where they need help raising that child, they need resources coming in that they can't supply themselves, then they need a partner. And the best partner for a child is the child's father, because that man has more invested in that child than a stranger. When I said that in the golden age of financial America, which is between 1945 and I would say 2005, women, black women especially, did not need a man. And since black women were already on the independent tip well before the golden age, it actually exacerbated the underlying condition of the black family, as we want to call it. But that is an explanation for a different day. Whereas white culture, which was contiguous and not interrupted, lasted a little bit longer. In other words, instead of an immediate breakup or immediate schism that black people saw, white people, it took 2 or 3, maybe even 4 generations for the stuff to actually show up. It's showing up now. It's showing up right now. In other words, the millennial out of wedlock rate is about 40%, which is actually on the same curve as the black out of wedlock rate. If you correct for the offset of, I say, like maybe 20 or 30 years, white women are on the same trajectory as black women. It's just delayed. So in times of stress, in the times of stress that are coming, because we are, in my opinion, and it's my opinion, a declining empire, and we have peaked out, and it's all down from here, women will start getting the hint. And slowly but surely, the independence that they've gained because of resources will actually go away. And as it goes away, women will get back in line. And I do believe, since black women always lead, because black folks are the canary in the coal mine, you're going to probably see it start showing up in the most vulnerable people first, which is black people. Black women will actually start coming back to the table before white women do, because white women have more lead time. But white women and white family structures aren't as damaged as the black ones are, or what we call black ones. So it's going to take them longer to actually react to the stimulus, or so we think. But it is an interesting study. I haven't read the study yet, but I'm going to leave a link in the description. You can do your own homework. Just one little note to actually put a dig to my detractors. I can't help it. Sometimes I'm like Taurine Rain. I got to be a little petty. Just one more factoid in the BGS column. With that, I'm going to jump off of here. This is BGS out, and I will see you guys on the next one.